It is part of the public record. We will read your comments, and they will be incorporated into the Voice of the Patient report. So please don't feel that we didn't come to you. It's just we're trying to stay on time as best as we can. Before we continue with topic 2, I want to look to Graham to hear from what came in through the web from the polling results. I know that you mentioned there were some other aspects not mentioned during our discussion.
In terms of when looking at the terms that Beth most described the bothersome aspects of neuropathic pain, there was a lot of focus on electric shocks and stabbing and shooting pains. And then for the question on the most bothersome impacts of neuropathic pain on daily life, 71% of people focused on their ability to perform in physical activities and mentioned things like fly fishing, dancing, driving, and just basic social interaction. And then for the question on how do neuropathic pain symptoms typically manifest, I think we had 0% in the room saying these first 2 options, but on the web we had 30% saying that the pain appears suddenly and progresses rapidly, and another 30% saying that the pain appears subtly and progresses slowly, and also a lot of focus on how the pain has been worsening over the duration of their since their diagnosis.
Thank you, Graham. Yes, Sarah?
Yes. So going back to the comment that the gentleman on the panel made about that maybe some of the people who are in the worst pain aren't in the room, what I will suggest is if you're on the webcast and particularly if your experience is different, that's what makes the docket so important. If you're able to just write even a few paragraphs and submit that in, it becomes a very helpful evidence that helps balance what we get from folks who were able to come today in person and folks who were not able to come today in person. So,
thank you, Sarah. Absolutely. Okay, so let's get started with topic 2, which is on patient perspectives on current approaches to treatment. Once again, we have a panel of 4. Our 4th panelist will be calling in, but we're going to start first with Linda. So once again, if you could press the red button and start your comments.
Hi, I'm not good as the others. I'm going to read mine. I am 47 years old, and I have chronic neuropathic pain for over 13 years. I have had 2 low back surgeries. I work full-time, and I have a family. I am here to provide a summary of my treatment journey as I have had intermittent relief from the pain that I experience, and it interferes with my activities of daily living, my sleep, and overall function. Currently, I have multiple herniated discs in my spine, and my pain on a scale of 1 to 10 ranges from 6 to 8 while taking the following medications: tramadol, diclofenac, cyclobenzaprine, Lyrica, over-the-counter supplements for bone and disc support, Tylenol as needed, and prednisone to reduce the inflammation as needed. I'm also seeing a chiropractor and an acupuncturist twice a week. I recently stopped physical therapy because it was aggravating the pain in my neck and lower back. I have a cervical traction unit that I use at home. I had a cervical epidural in February, and I just had a lumbar epidural in May. The following 3 days after the epidurals, I had almost complete relief. The epidurals have helped tremendously, but they usually wear off, and my pain goes back to between 6 and 8. The current treatment regimen has been able to reduce my pain as well, however, but it causes drowsiness, dizziness, lightheadedness. I have trouble concentrating and remembering information. I have gained weight. I have swollen hands and feet. I have dry mouth and a metal taste in my mouth. I also have occasional leg cramps. I am so exhausted, yet I'm unable to sleep through the night unless I take these medications. Each time I roll over in bed, I wake up from the pain. These were not the only treatments that I've had. I got to where I am today through a journey of treatments beginning over 13 years ago, and it has included Percocet, Oxycontin, or Vicodin, diazepam, cyclobenzaprine, naproxen, and prednisone. The dosages were frequently tweaked, and the side effects were hard to manage. I was anxious, jittery, and extremely agitated. Under this treatment regimen, I had difficulty driving a car, concentrating, and functioning. I was also under chiropractic care, which included traction, electrical stimulation, ice, and adjustments. The treatments would reduce the pain, but it was temporary, meaning only a few days to a week. I've also had multiple trigger point injections, cortisone shots, and epidurals, which gave me temporary relief, meaning only maybe a few months. But those procedures are limited if they actually worked. I've tried massages, a therapeutic bed and pillows, ice, heat, acupuncture, hydrotherapy, exercise, yoga, and even an inversion table. Over time, the L5 herniation would heal, but then reoccur maybe within 6 to 12 months with lower back and leg pain. Each time I went through the same treatment process all over again, trying to find relief and avoid surgery. But eventually I needed it. In 2009, a discectomy was performed, and during recovery, I was on the similar medications as before. After roughly 6 months, I achieved a good level of pain relief, and I was off all medications and functioning well for almost 2 years. In 2011, I herniated the disc again, and I was placed on the similar treatments. The pain meds helped, but I was lightheaded, dizzy, and it was hard to concentrate. I also had the sensation of feeling high. The anti-inflammatories made me jittery and agitated and anxious. I was extremely tired, and I woke up feeling groggy. I had more trigger point injections and was still under chiropractic care. I was also in physical therapy, but that aggravated it. I was unable to get any relief from my back and leg pain. The MRI showed that I was bone on bone in my lumbar spine, so I finally underwent a lumbar fusion in 2012. After the surgery, I was in physical therapy, taking Vicodin, then Percocet, and then I began to feel better. About 4 months after the surgery, I was medication-free and feeling good. I was able to rejoin my bowling team and take long walks with my dogs. However, I limited my movement based on my own fear of re-injuring the back. It took a while, but I began to feel confident and started working out and exercising. Just this past July, while exercising, I herniated 2 discs in my cervical spine. I started the same medication therapy all over again. I also began cervical traction. I had slight reduction in my pain. And in October, just 3 months later, I herniated 3 more discs in my lumbar spine. Same treatment continued and physical therapy was added. I received a cervical epidural in February of this year, as well as a lumbar epidural in May. The doctor has also prescribed Lyrica for my lower back, neck, and leg pain. At the beginning, my pain was at an 8 or a 9. Now I have days at 5 or 6. I have been on Lyrica since March, starting at a low dosage. I am now up to 300 milligrams a day. It has relieved a great deal of pain, although I hope I can endure the side effects of the medication, as this might be a long-term treatment for me. It will hopefully give me enough relief so I could sleep comfortably through the night, walk, and maybe endure some exercise so I can lose weight without the drugs, and I can avoid another surgery. I realize this is my life and the prognosis isn't great. The possibility of reoccurrence will always be there. I hope there is a treatment or a drug out there that can give me some improvement in my condition and help me consistently feel better and help me function at the same time.
Thank you, Linda. Next we have Shuri.
My diagnosis is idiopathic small fiber peripheral neuropathy, recently expanded to autonomic neuropathy. Although they say it's idiopathic, there's some consideration given to the fact that when I was 23, I had radiation therapy following ovarian cancer, and which resulted in radiation ileitis. So, there's some doctors who really like to make that connection. I experienced my first neuropathic symptoms 18 years ago surrounding a 125-mile walking pilgrimage in northern Spain, beginning with neuroma symptoms and toe numbness, then nerve pain, which have increased over the years. I am now numb up to my knees and in soul-sapping pain at least 3 to 4 nights a week. not as intense during the day, and I'm totally unaware of foot injuries. I've now begun having symptoms in my fingertips and my left cheek. My current treatment includes daily minimum prescription medications, 3,000 milligrams of Neurontin, Tramadol 600 milligrams, and Mirapex 0.5 milligrams. I also take various over-the-counter supplements. I sometimes use prescription lidocaine ointment now that Medicare no longer covers the lidocaine patch, although I'm not sure why, because that was helpful. Use OxyContin and hydrocodone, cannabis oil, and my non-drug therapies include massage, ice packs, and heat pad for leg cramps. I meet twice a week with a personal trainer focusing on balance and core strength, and I've recently begun an aquafit class. Over time, my medication dosages have steadily increased, beginning with low-dose Neurontin, now up to 3,000 milligrams a day, as I mentioned. Lyrica, with which I gained 25 pounds in 6 weeks, and I couldn't stand that. Cymbalta, I stopped after only a few days as I felt crazy and like I was outside of myself. Topiramate medication, which did help with weight loss, but made the top of my head buzz and kept me on the verge of tears. Last year, I had 4 sympathetic nerve blocks, which in no way changed my unpredictable experience of good days and bad days. I've resisted repeated suggestions of a spinal stimulator trial and or implant. It seems too risky and difficult to remove. I focused more on balance with my personal trainer, and I'm contemplating the purchase of a TENS unit or the rebuilder recommended by my neurologist who specializes in neuropathy. How effective is all of this treatment? I don't feel that the pain's really under control. It attacks and abates when I least expect it. However, I imagine the medication takes the edge off, and despite the perceived side effects, I'm reluctant to reduce dosages for fear of increased pain. Massage and other therapies such as acupuncture provide temporary relief, so I'm thinking maybe it's time to explore meditation. It seems I've been chasing this pain, increasing medication dosages for the past 16 years or so. The prospect of continuing on the same trajectory not only contributes to my chronic pain-related depression, but also causes concern about what I'll need 5 to 10 years from now. For example, recently my peripheral neuropathy led to Charcot-arthropathy, which is not Charcot-Marie-Tooth, in one foot, resulting in a Liz Frank situation necessitating surgical midfoot fusion. There's a possibility that the same condition will develop in the other foot, and the prospect of a fusion fail worries me. I'm also concerned that I'll be walker-dependent and ultimately wheelchair-bound before my time. I would say that my condition today is managed, certainly, but not well managed. Significant downsides to my current treatments include debilitating, discouraging, and downright dangerous side effects such as weight gain, 40 to 45 pounds since my initial diagnosis, brain fog, both of which are attributable to the Neurontin, as well as drowsiness, difficulty focusing on my writing and translating, and positional vertigo. Travel to Baltimore for neurologist appointments and various clinical trials is time-consuming, plus driving any distance is risky due to my tendency to drop off. Repeated nerve biopsies, and most of us have suffered through those painful nerve conduction tests. Numerous negative treatment-related issues weigh heavily on my family, especially on my husband. For example, several years ago, I asked my first neurologist if there was any relation between my meds and diminished libido and or sexual arousal, to which he too quickly replied in the negative. I was curious then as to how the medication could block pain only in neuropathy-affected nerves below the knee. The connection is now recognized. I'm 70, and some might think it shouldn't matter so much anymore, but in a healthy 45-year marriage, it does continue to matter, and we do lament that loss. Although I found it necessary to sell my property management business 5 years ago due to unpredictable pain, sleeplessness, and lack of focus and energy, I still have many regular responsibilities relating to our family investments and the care of our 7-year-old granddaughter. I must often choose between meeting these responsibilities or taking the time to accommodate my pain and the treatment thereof. We have an extensive wine collection, which is now pretty much off limits to me due to the restrictions imposed by my meds. Not a huge sacrifice, but I don't think my husband will have time to drink it all alone. Peripheral neuropathy isn't going to kill me, in the short term anyway, but some of these medications can cause me to entertain the idea. I understand that my possession and use of cannabis oil for pain relief is not approved in the Commonwealth of Virginia, nor is medical marijuana in other forms. There are those whose constant pain is even more severe than mine, even at my worst times when I'm doubled over by the feeling of railroad spikes being driven into my foot or rolling back and forth in bed and beating the mattress because I can't tolerate the pain. Surely if medical marijuana can help anyone, Perhaps without the potentially devastating side effects of opioids, it should be available to peripheral neuropathy sufferers in all states. And I think the rest of my information here is pretty much shared by everyone else, so I'll let you go ahead.
Thank you very much, Shuri. Next we have Lou.
2009 seems to have been a bad year for a lot of the folks here, and for me as well. I was stricken with CIDP in the year 2009. I was diagnosed the following year, and I underwent 20 months of high-dose IVIG, which sent my CIDP into remission. However, I suffered significant damage to my peripheral nerves as a result of my CIDP, and the damage is permanent, and the pain that I suffer is constant. What I currently do to treat my neuropathic pain is I do a lot. I think overall, I don't just focus on my nerve health and trying to deal with my pain. I focus really on my overall health in general. I think it's very important to do everything you can for your overall general well-being to deal with the problem of your pain. Because it doesn't just help with the pain, but it helps you feel better emotionally if you are living healthier. And I always say that it's funny, I had to get sick to get healthy because I never worried about my health before I got CIDP. Once I got CIDP, it was really all that I worried about. And I changed my lifestyle. I became a vegetarian. This lady mentioned meditation. I took a 10-day course in Vipassana meditation, which is a mindfulness meditation, and I highly recommend that to anybody who has chronic pain. There are studies I know that have shown that mindfulness meditation helps to reduce your pain. It also helps to reduce anxiety. It helps to reduce depression. And there's a cycle here. There's a mind-body connection between the physical sensations and the physical symptoms and the emotional and psychological components of it. If you feel less depression, you feel less pain, and vice versa. If you feel less anxiety, you feel less pain, and vice versa. And I always say that you don't have to feel a lot better to feel a lot better. If you're in chronic pain and you have pain every day of your life, if there's a day that you feel even a little better, trust me, you feel a lot better. And that's a healthy spiral. And we can get into unhealthy spirals because I don't know anyone who has chronic pain that hasn't suffered with depression as well. And we were talking earlier about would you rather have something to help with the pain, would you rather have something to help with the underlying disease? And I will tell you, there have been times I've been in so much pain where I didn't think I could keep going. And at that point, I didn't care whether my nerves were healed. I just needed something to give me relief from this pain. There were times when I paced for 2 or 3 days in a row. Forget about sleeping and lying in bed, I couldn't sit because of the pain. So some of the things I do, some things I've tried have been successful, many have not. I tried massage and acupuncture were not successful at all. Acupuncture was in fact quite excruciatingly painful. I don't know why I thought that it would be a good idea when I had damaged nerves to have somebody stick a needle in them and twist it, like that would feel better. It didn't. I tried some medications that did not help. I was on high-dose Neurontin initially, over 4,000 milligrams a day, and it did nothing for my pain. I will tell you all sitting here today that Lyrica saved my life. There was a time when my pain was uncontrollable, and I could not sleep. I could not even sit down. I couldn't do anything but pace the house and vacuum the house. The house was never cleaner than when I was in terrible pain. But I tried Lyrica and almost immediately got relief from the Lyrica. I take 450 milligrams of Lyrica a day, which is a fairly high dose. I have been able recently to cut that back to 300 milligrams. I kind of did that on my own, so don't tell my doctor. But I wanted to see if I could reduce it by doing some of these other things. Another thing that I do that's very, very helpful is exercise. I feel very blessed that I don't have any physical limitations as a result of my CIDP. I work out, I lift weights 3 times a week. I hike 4 miles with my dog in the woods, 4 times a week. I do those sorts of things, and I found that those things are extremely helpful to me physically with my pain and mentally with the emotional aspects that come with having chronic pain. At the beginning, there was a time when I didn't know what was happening when I was first coming down with my CIDP, and I had these symptoms that all I could do was take Advil and walk constantly. It was the only thing that would allow me to reduce the pain. I feel my pain is very, very well managed. I do have days when I have significant flare-ups. They usually last a week to 2 weeks when I get a flare-up. and they are quite uncomfortable. But I think my pain is very well managed with the Lyrica and the other things that I do. There are downsides, of course, to the medication. I always describe the mental effect as being in a speedboat and somebody throws an anchor over the side. That's kind of how your brain feels on Lyrica. It does cause drowsiness. The side effects for me were worse the first month that I took it. I felt intoxicated. I felt dizzy. I was drowsy quite a bit. My body seemed to have adjusted, and those passed after about a month. I still am, I get some drowsiness with it. There is a potential for weight gain. My weight's fluctuated a little bit. I have swollen hands and feet. Sometimes they're significantly swollen. A little bit of forgetfulness. There are times when my short-term memory's been affected, I will say, significantly at times. The Lyrica, sometimes I'll be talking to people in the middle of a sentence. I won't be able to finish it because I don't remember what I was saying when I started the sentence. So those things do come with the medication. You pay a price for it, but it's been a miracle in my life. As I said, I think it saved my life. An ideal treatment for me would be a pill that I could swallow that would take away all my pain immediately and let me be the person that I was. I don't think that's realistic, but I think a medication that would control my pain, would perhaps eliminate the flares that I get, and would have minimal to no side effects for me would be the ideal, and would be cheap, would be the ideal, because Lyrica, by the way, is quite expensive. So it would be, reasonably affordable. I think that would be ideal for me. And if I had an opportunity to participate in a clinical study, what would be the factors that would go into that? I would have to. The first factor would be how I was feeling. If I'm feeling pretty well, and as I feel now with my pain pretty well controlled most of the time, I don't think I want to be involved in a clinical trial. I think if my symptoms were significantly worse, I would probably be more receptive to being involved in a clinical trial. I also would want to know the potential side effects, of course, long-term and short-term, of whatever the regimen would be in the clinical trial. I am concerned, I will say, about Lyrica, because I have heard some things anecdotally about long-term Lyrica use and perhaps an effect on dementia. So that does concern me, what effect it may have down the road. I know how it affects me with the brain fog now, and I think long-term, what might that do to me? So I am concerned about that. Any clinical trial, I would want to know what I was getting, what the possible long-term and short-term side effects would be, and how effective it might be would be, if they could give me any kind of an idea how effective the clinical trial might be, I think that would also be very important to me.
Thank you very much, Lou. So our final panelist is Jackie, and Jackie's going to be joining us on the phone today. So here's a picture of Jackie. And Jackie, are you on now? Are you on the telephone?
Yes, I am.
Great. Welcome, Jackie, and please go ahead with your comments.
All right. Well, greetings, everyone from Ohio. I'm sorry I couldn't be there. My foot neuropathy is likely secondary to nearly lifelong Lyme disease that was not uncovered until about 5 years ago when I was 68 years old. I was given various diagnoses over my life that, looking back, suggest that Lyme was affecting me at a young age. Perhaps my immune system was damaged, setting the stage for Lyme after I had the Asian flu in 1958 with a high fever for 10 days. After that, my diagnoses included inhalant allergies, paroxysmal atrial tachycardia, and adrenal fatigue in my 20s, fibromyalgia in my 30s, Hashimoto's and food allergies in my 40s, chronic fatigue syndrome and osteoporosis in my 50s, SIBO and Lyme in my 60s. All of these may have caused a plethora of genetic defects to express, which I learned about recently from the 23andMe genetic test. Okay, wait a minute here. I lost my place. Okay. Foot neuropathy first appeared in my mid-50s with the sensation that a small child was standing on my feet, and very gradually escalated to the point about 5 years ago that I was able to put the label foot neuropathy on what I was feeling. Since then, my symptoms have included the feeling that I have a wide band across my foot at the base of the toes, numbness and tingling, as well as periodic stabbing pains or electrical shocks, and foot and leg cramps. Okay, my down arrow isn't working for some reason. Sorry about that. Okay. These, however, are only a small portion of those symptoms caused by the Lyme itself. The doctor who diagnosed my Lyme via the Western blot test tried B12 shots, which did not help. I don't recall him having any other suggestions for therapy. A Cleveland Clinic neurologist I consulted last fall gave me a list of supplements, including alpha-lipoic acid, which I had taken previously, and resumed taking with no significant improvement, as well as others, which I was already taking. She said I probably have a lot of inflammation and possibly the beginnings of an autoimmune condition, but I was not offered tests for inflammatory factors of Lyme disease or a possible autoimmune condition. She admitted to not knowing much about Lyme, and I suspect she's not the exception. Regarding my approaches to treatment, I have generally eschewed drugs because of side effects, which I discovered from the 23andMe test may have resulted because I have a gene that dictates I only need about half the normally prescribed dose of any medication. I only started addressing my neuropathy a few years ago because prior to that it was an annoying but tolerable condition. It seems that my neuropathy continues to very gradually worsen, and it's hard to say because the change happens so slowly that I think I get used to the new condition and can't recall exactly how I was before. Of late, I have sought out therapies said to help the autonomic nervous system and vagus nerve, which is what it seems Lyme has most affected in my case. And that includes the heart, the stomach, bladder, etc. I go for acupuncture every 2 weeks in the summer and weekly in the winter, and get craniosacral therapy as well as reflexology and chiropractic every 2 weeks. It has helped some of my other symptoms more than my foot neuropathy, probably because foot neuropathy isn't related to so much to the autonomic nervous system. I take a number of the supplements that should quell inflammation, if that is the root of my neuropathy, but they have not made a noticeable difference. Before bed, to help with sleep, I use an essential oil foot cream, homeopathic remedies, and a low-level light therapy device on my feet that helps tone the symptoms down but does not eliminate them. I have tried many dietary approaches and do many things related to the larger Lyme issue. The obvious downside of this approach is that it only takes the edge off the neuropathy, does not stop its advance, and requires continuously remembering and making time to apply the therapies even when traveling. More frustrating is that I don't feel I understand the cause of this symptom or the many others that I have that are attributable to end-stage Lyme disease. Given the lack of knowledge that currently exists about neurological Lyme and the fact that I usually have unpleasant side effects to drugs, I doubt I would participate in clinical trials should a drug be developed for my condition. It would depend on the listed side effects. I would underscore most emphatically that more research is needed. Treatments with a clear rationale really can't be developed until the impact of Lyme on the nervous system over time is fully understood. It has been reported that 300,000 people in the United States are diagnosed each year with Lyme, and a significant percentage of them go on to develop the chronic form, often because they aren't treated soon enough. I realize that the concept of chronic Lyme disease has not been totally accepted by some doctors. However, it's hard for me to come up with a rationale for all the medical issues I've had over my life without seeing Lyme as being involved, if not causative. Knowing how slow the wheels of research grind, I don't really have much hope that treatments which might help me will appear during my lifetime. But I do hope that they will be developed in the next 20 to 30 years and help the coming larger group of people who will be presenting with foot neuropathy and other symptoms of end-stage Lyme. Thanks for the opportunity to give my input.
Thank you so much, Jackie. Okay, so similar to what I said for our Topic 1 panelists, thank you so much to our Topic 2 panelists for all the preparation you did. I know it's hard to put all these thoughts down and get the short amount of time to be able to express it all, but you did such a great job, so thank you for doing that. And thank you, Jackie, for joining us. Okay, so I'd like to do another show of hands and ask you in the audience, how many of you heard your own experiences with treatments reflected in the comments shared by at least one of our panelists? Okay, so we have a few hands here, but it sounds like there's probably other experiences also then that were not shared. So we'll get to those in just a minute here. Let's do our next polling question. So if you could get your clickers out. Okay. Have you ever used any of the following drug therapies to help treat your neuropathic pain? And you can check all that apply. A, antiarrhythmic drugs. B, antidepressant drugs. C, anticonvulsant drugs. D, transdermal or topical patches. E, opioid pain medicines. F, prescription NSAIDs. I'm sorry, I'm going to butcher a lot of these words, so I'm going to say them as best as I can. G, over-the-counter products. H, other drug therapies not mentioned. Or I, I'm not taking any drug therapies. So you can check all that apply. And those of you on the web, please be sure to enter your thoughts in as well. Okay, so what we have here, we have antidepressant drugs, anticonvulsant drugs, transdermal or topical patches, opioid pain medicines, and then we have quite a few over-the-counter products, other drug therapies not mentioned, so we'll definitely be hearing from that. And then also about 23% of you that said, I am not taking any drug therapies. So let's start with those of you that are taking some of these drug therapies. How many of you, by a show of hands, take at least one of these things daily? Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4. We have about 14 hands raised. And then how many of you take these drugs only when needed? Okay, so we have about 3 or 4 hands raised for that. Graham, what are we seeing on the web with the polling results?
We actually have very different results on the web. We have 57% say they take antidepressants, 80% say they take anticonvulsants, 41% transdermal topical patches, 53% opioid pain medicines, 54% over-the-counter products, and 41% say other drug therapies not mentioned.
Okay, thank you. So without focusing on, let's say, one drug in particular, would somebody like to share your experiences with what specific aspects of your neuropathic pain, and I understand that the pain comes in, you have different sensations of pain and different severity of pain, but can you talk about what aspects of that pain does the drug address or not address well? So maybe if you could tell us what you're taking and then what, is it working, is it not working, what aspects of the pain is it addressing or not addressing?
Narcotics. I take narcotics just to make me fall asleep at night.
Okay.
That's it.
Okay. And do you find that they help you stay asleep? They don't help. Okay. 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 And
Yeah,
I just want to say we do have a comment back there, so can we make sure we get to her too? Yep. Go ahead.
I rarely have pain. If I do, it just takes the edge off of it. And just I can forget about it basically after I take something.
Okay, so it takes the edge off. Okay. Magna, let's go to. Yep.
Yes, I take a cocktail of meds.
Okay.
I'm on Lyrica. Excuse me. I'm on Lyrica, Baclofen, Meloxicam, and Oxycodone. And it just, on a scale of 1 to 10, usually mine is 11, and it just takes the edge off. I have chronic pain every day, and I live with it. And it just takes the edge off so that I can barely get out of the bed.
Okay.
But most of the time, I'm living in my bedroom.
Okay. And your name?
My name is Mona
Sonia.
Henson.
Can you
And
tell me what are the, I know you said it takes the edge off.
Yeah.
What are the downsides that you're experiencing with the cocktail that you're taking?
I'm sorry.
What are some of the downsides that
The side effects?
side effects?
The worst part of it is I lost my job. Basically, I had to stop what I loved doing. I was a television news producer. I did that job for 28 years, most of it right here, in Philadelphia, PA. I had to be very sharp. I mean, I worked the noon show, noon news, and that was always where it was always breaking news. I mean, it was one of those shows where every time, but right before you went on the air, something was always breaking, and it was always something that you had to run in and scripts always changed. As soon as the anchors were going down, to the news, do the news, you had to tell them, okay, we're changing everything, everybody. There's been a 4-car pileup, or somebody has just shot somebody, or, and you had to be sharp. And you had to tell them in their ear while they're reading something else, you had to be sharp and tell them while they're reading what you're changing. And I'm here I never told anybody for a year that I had been diagnosed with CIDP. Here I was taking Lyrica and oxycodone, and I didn't tell anybody, and I was having memory gaps. And it got to the point where at one point I was taking at least 2 or 3 Lyricas and oxycodones before a show. And at one point, I couldn't even remember some of the things that they were telling me. And I'm supposed to be telling a news anchor in his ear, and I can't even remember the stuff.
Okay.
And I realized I couldn't do this job anymore. And that was one of the downsides, I guess.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Memory gaps, because I was having brain fogs.
Okay. Thank you very much. And I know a few others have mentioned the brain fog also, so it sounds like it's definitely a significant downside. How about others? Can you talk about what medications you're taking and what specific aspects of the pain or the sensations that you feel that it addresses or does not address?
Sure. I take gabapentin. I take a lot of gabapentin, 3,300 milligrams a day. That's 11 pills. Without it, I couldn't function. With it, I can function. So all the symptoms that everybody's described are just a whole lot less with the medication. In terms of the side effects, I'm honestly not sure. Brain fog is there, but is it the fault of gabapentin or the chemo I had or the fact that I'll be 70 in August? I'm just not sure. But anyway, I wouldn't, I feel like wherever I go, I have that bottle or jar of my gabapentin pills. I'm tethered to it because it's miserable without it.
So, anybody else would you like to? Oh, sure. We're going to hear from this gentleman right here first.
Okay, my name is Bob, and I have Guillain-Barré syndrome, and I take gabapentin, which works for me quite a bit of the time, but I try to exercise, and I'm still learning that if I go do too much, it's very easy for me to do too much and not feel the pain for maybe 5 days or so. And that's when the gabapentin doesn't cut it anymore. And I really haven't changed anything at this point to address that. But that's what I find is when I do too much, the gabapentin is not enough.
Okay.
I had a question
That looks
for...
like your GPS is ready to get you out of here. No, that's okay.
I had a
Don't
question
worry.
for the FDA panel. I know you approved the safety and the efficacy of drugs. What about the long-term effects of drugs? I mean, do you periodically go back and evaluate or look at, what are the long-term impacts of taking Lyrica or gabapentin for 20 years or 10 years or whatever? What does it do to you? And did you change your certifications on the basis of long-term effects? Or?
So the 20-year question is a tough one. What we do at the time of approval for drugs like these is we usually have data for about a year of exposure, some safety information. But once a product is approved, it is followed on a regular, continuous basis. Right now, we have the standard look after a newly approved drug meets certain criteria in terms of time and number of exposures. But what you'll see over time is that products that have been on the market, once we become aware of new information, we continually update the labels. So for instance, when the association with suicidal thoughts was discovered for some of the antidepressants and the anticonvulsants, and then it was explored to see if it was a class effect or a drug-specific effect, and then the products were all updated with that. So it's an ongoing, continual process, but we don't have a systematic way of evaluating that kind of really long-term exposure. I'm not sure that any country really has that, but we do consistently look for signals. So for instance, some of you may be aware that we recently updated the labeling for all of the NSAIDs because we've been following the risk for cardiac events, and that's been a very challenging thing to explore over time. But it's something that we're continuously looking at. So for pretty much all of these drugs, we have ongoing surveillance.
Thank you, Sharon. Okay, so let me look to my FDA panel to see if you have any questions at this point.
If people will bear with me, I'd like to just go back and explore maybe a few more people's thoughts on if you were going to be reporting your, it's the same question, I just would like to get a little bit more input if people are so inclined. In terms of being able to rate your pain over time and how you think it makes sense for us to ask you, how an investigator in a clinical study, or even your clinician, but clearly I'm interested in it also from the perspective of development of drugs, how to get at the painful aspects, and are there any particular ways you think would be helpful in terms of instructions to people?
Looks like we have several hands right. Okay.
Oh. Again, my name is Tim. It seems to me that pain is a very personal experience. And so my thought is that when you're evaluating a patient, you need to get a baseline on an individual basis. Is how do you describe it? What are the components? You can certainly use some of the common terms that are used, but I think they mean different things to different people. We all experience things differently. And then from that baseline, we can, and intensity, and then moving forward, you can rate the effectiveness of whatever we're measuring based on that initial evaluation. But I think it's going to be different for everybody.
Thank you.
I totally agree with the last speaker. I would say something like asking a patient baseline and then during a trial something like, does your pain allow you to, how many hours a week does your pain allow you to work? Or how many hours a night do you lose sleep because of pain, rather than asking, how do you rate your pain or something?
Thank you. Adam?
I would, I guess, be the third person here to highlight that theme. I think for me, I keep what I would say is a quasi-pain journal. And the reason I do that is, I've experimented with some different medications and different alternative approaches to treating my neuropathy. And I found it's very useful to have, now I basically have a 2-year set of notes I can scroll back through and see, okay, well this, correlated with this improvement, et cetera. What I've personally found is that the easiest way to measure improvement is functionality. So it's, for me, it's how far can I walk before it's time to sit down? How long can I stand before it's time to sit down? And I think those might be a little bit more specific and measurable than, rating your pain on a scale of 1 to 10. And I think Leslie's absolutely right. You could also look at, how long can you sleep without being woken up? Or you can certainly expand the criteria. But for me, it's really been, just you could actually measure functionally, give people a Fitbit, and they can get very specific right there. Yeah.
Thank you, Adam. Let's
I agree. I was going to say that both of those things too. The other thing I would add to a questionnaire is what your mood is. How are you doing today? Because that has a lot to do with how I will answer how painful I am, is how good a mood I'm in. So I think it's a rather complicated question and diary to keep. Like you, Adam, I kept one too for years. I wanted to be able to go into my doctor and say, this is how I felt every single day from morning to night. And I did always include those things like, but today I was able to work. So even though I was in pain, I was feeling pretty good. I assessed my pain at a 5 because I found my moods help a lot. So it's complicated. You should ask people to write up samples of what they think a good pain scale is. I mean, out on the web or something.
So it looks like we have...
I do have a follow-up question for you, Beth. I know you described mood, I guess. Could you give a little additional context to the mood? What do you mean by mood, I guess? Could you describe a little further?
I am a lot more painful when I am feeling very lone and depressed. If there's a weekend I have absolutely nothing to do and nobody's invited me anywhere and nobody wants to come visit me, I would just say that I am in extreme pain. My pain is screaming and I don't want to live anymore. But if I go to work and I save a life, because I'm a veterinary technician, I'm feeling pretty good and that pain's not so bad anymore. Does that answer it?
Right, it does. And I also have just piggyback on the question that Sharon asked, I guess. There are many aspects that I think Adam mentioned about, can I walk? I used to be able to walk 10 miles, I guess. Now I can only walk a mile with a lot of pain. What else is important that you think that we should include in questionnaire for clinical trials? I know the numbness I heard was one of the question, but again, like to hear other thoughts.
Sure.
One of the goofy things about this disease is that pain may not be an absolute indicator of the progression of the disease. As mine has gotten worse over the years and the numbness has come up where it used to really hurt and be oversensitive, now it's numb, doesn't hurt. I'll get the pitchfork through the foot thing at night, but the daily kind of pain may not be as intense. That may not be an indicator of improvement or anything.
Okay, thank you. And looks like we have one more comment.
2 quick comments. Number one, a lot of these questions are on a Social Security disability application that you may want to read. There's a lot of that similar questioning about what you do, how long you do it, et cetera. And second, nobody's really mentioned water therapy. Anybody doing water therapy, pool therapy? And I think it's an excellent way of relieving and making you feel a lot better